Tate Chronicles now transmitting.
Welcome to the Tate Chronicles on Healthcare Now Radio. And now, here's your host, Jim Tate.
Good day, citizens of the free world, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea. I bring you a warm welcome. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and thank you for tuning in to the Tate Chronicles. Join me as we cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. I'm really fascinated by the discussion we'll be having today, really around the concept of AI scribes in the EHR workflow. My guest today is Mahshid Yassaei, co-founder and CEO at Tali.AI. Mahshid, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
You know, one of the main complaints I often hear about in terms of electronic health records is that providers have been required to become data entry experts. It's so common these days to hear patients say that during an office visit, their provider spent more time looking at the screen than looking at them. I've seen some providers have used human scribes to follow them from room to room, handling the interaction with EHR. But with the introduction of AI into the workflow, there appears to be a solution with AI-powered scribes. And so I know your work at Tali.AI, you developed an AI scribe. But just in general terms first, what do you see as potential benefits of the technology of AI scribe?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a computer scientist by background, and when I first heard about this problem, I couldn't actually believe that clinicians, some of the most educated and passionate people in the country, are losing so much of their time. I'm seeing numbers around 15 to 20 hours per week on data entry and administrative tasks. But when we started actually interviewing clinicians, from family physicians to nurse practitioners, even a specialist, and we learned that it's not just the time saved that's bothering these clinicians, but it's also the massive cognitive load they need to tolerate when their patients is talking to them, and they're, as you mentioned, they're all either facing their screen typing, or they have to remember all the details or take notes on a piece of paper to have to document later. So that is part of it, that they basically have to deal with that cognitive load that will have an impact on how they feel and how exhausted they feel at the end of the day, but also on their judgment and the quality of the care that the patient will receive. The other thing is basically we, like as a patient, I always experience that, like I feel like my doctor was distracted and she was not paying attention. And she was always in a rush. So we didn't even have time to build the kind of relationship that like especially a family doctor or a patient would need to build together to basically in a long term maximize the value for the patient. So all of these problems, in addition to the financial aspect of it, a clinician that's always rushed and that doesn't necessarily remember all the details of the conversation or the narrative of the patient exactly in their own words. The documentation, the type of documentation they basically generate is usually lower quality to what we're seeing a human scribe would do or a AI scribe would do, where it has a lot more power and time to actually generate the documentation, which will then help them as a case to protect them against liabilities, but also to maximize the billing opportunities. So maximizing the revenue for clinicians and their organization. So there are so many different aspects of the problem at the point of care is that these solution categories are addressing. So here in Canada, Ontario MD did an evaluation study on Tali last year, and the results they showed were very, very interesting. They reported 85% reduced cognitive load by clinicians that use the product, almost 80% improved relationship between a clinician and a patient. And these are things that I think over time we'll see the impact of it on the quality of care as well.
You know, I know you've brought to market at Tali an ambient AI scribe. how does it work? Is it an app that runs on top of an EHR?
Yeah, so Tali has different modalities.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Chrome extension that, as you said, will go as a very small overlay on top of the EHR. There is a
Mm-hmm.
desktop application. There is a mobile application. There is an SDK version as well, where in our partnership with EMR companies, we basically provide them that SDK. So when the patient opens, when the provider actually opens their EHR and open the patient chart, Tali is already there. They don't even need to install anything to get us started. So we have maximized the opportunities for us to serve clinicians in however they practice and however they basically, whether it's a desktop application or a web application. But the vision is basically to take over all of the admin work end to end and be that single voice interface for everything clinicians need to do with their software. So the way we look at the market is, I know some companies are betting that on that clinicians are going to be replaced. We don't look at it that way. We think clinicians are going to remain the center of care for patients. And we think EMR companies will be the holders of the data. But the interface through which clinicians actually interact with their software and interact with EHR, we think that interface is going to turn to be all through natural language and through voice. And that is where we're playing. So our vision is to basically take over all of the admin work, even before the patient walks into the room, when the clinician and patient meet, and then after the patient leaves the room. Because there is right now, most of the solutions are just focusing on at the central point of clinician and patient meeting, but there's a lot that happens before and after as well.
And let me create a scenario, and you kind of walk me through the details of it. So let's say at an internal medicine practice, of a physician is using Tali.AI, and they walk in the room and with their laptop, and it's running, and so it's totally voice controlled or voice activated. What happens when the patient talks? Is it only capturing the provider's side of things, or what if there are two voices in the room? These are pretty general questions. I'm sorry to ask them.
Yeah. No, it is. It could be both the patient and the provider, but also more than two people, one the family of the patient are also in the room. First of all, with Tali, clinicians don't have to carry their laptop with them. We see that most clinicians actually put Tali's mobile app in their pocket, and then Tali will capture the whole conversation. So before the visit starts, a clinician will ask for the consent. They usually hey, there is this tool I've started using that helps me with some of my admin work. 99% of patients give their consent to that. So then the clinician hits the record button. Tali will listen to the whole conversation between two or how many people are in the room, fully transcribes the conversation, but then synthesizes the log of the conversation to generate different types of notes. It could be a sub note, but it could be also a consult letter. It could be specific, like a patient summary sent to the patient as well. And when the clinician approves these notes, they're sent to the EHR and to the patient portal and the platforms. Yeah.
Well, and so I'm curious as to how the documentation, as far as discrete data, gets into the EHR. So let's say a patient comes in, they've never had asthma, but the provider has decided they should be included a diagnosis of asthma. How would they speak that in such a way it would end up in the EHR as discrete data, as a diagnostic?
That is where the integration with EHRs become very important. So in our go-to-market strategy, we have made it very central for our go-to-market strategy to be in very close collaboration with EMR and EHR companies. And that is where basically part of the documentation is the narrative, or the unstructured text. Part of it, as you mentioned, is the structured pieces that goes into the EMR. That's where we basically call into the APIs of the EMR companies, of our partners, and basically update all the structured fields as well. But on the sidebar where the clinician actually approves the note, we
Yes.
have written all of these fields. For example, let's say there is a section for allergies, a section for medication. We'll say these are the items that we have identified from the conversation. When they
Uh-huh.
that, then we basically populate the whole EMR with those information.
So that's that goes towards accuracy then also, because that's the human review
Exactly.
of what's been generated. I see.
Exactly.
Well, what about the placing of orders? Can Tali.AI place orders? How would or is it the same thing? It would end up on a checklist that it thinks you want to order something, and the provider just okays it or acknowledges it, and at the end of the encounter.
That is certainly something in the roadmap that we are working on. But right now, we basically just identify that these are the action items. So if there is an admin that sits at the front desk and the clinician usually sends it over to them to send those, it would be easier for them in terms of that communication. But for sure, in future, we're actually automating that process as well. But this goes back to the conversation we had on like some of the tasks of the follow-up tasks that happen after the patient leaves the room, including sending lab requisitions or prescriptions or all of that, will certainly come right after to cover more of the admin work for clinicians.
And, as well as such things as scheduling referrals.
Exactly.
And so typically right now, when I've been in a room during an encounter and a provider has a human scribe, that scribe is listening to the provider, and if they've worked with them long enough, they kind of are able to read their mind a little bit and know what they want to do. So they are entering not only data on the patient, but they are creating orders, and whether they're lab orders or radiology orders. And so this sounds like this may be the next step in AI scribe development.
Exactly. So right now, organizations that are using human scribes, they're using AI scribe to improve the efficiency of the human scribe. Because now that person has access to the full transcription, has access to the summary of the visit and the patient summary and all of those notes quickly. So they can spend more of their time on the follow-up task. Or if before this, a human scribe was supporting like 2 or 3 different doctors, now they can support 4 doctors or 5 doctors. So basically, right now, we're seeing that in a lot of cases, AI scribe is helping the human scribe, making them more efficient. In the future, we think it's going to take more and more of the work of the human scribe.
Is there any time lag in an AI scribe, or as soon as a provider says they're through, does that follow-up list or documentation, is it ready for approval, or is there much of a time lag there?
So when we look at the history of this, I would say, industry, like you're right, we have this part of the industry where there are human scribes and companies that offer human scribes basically to hospitals and healthcare organizations. After that was a category of solutions that are hybrid models where there is AI plus human scribe. So in the interface of it, it would be AI listening and documenting, but in the background, there would be human reviewing, making edits, doing the follow-up task, as you mentioned. And then for those cases, yes, there was a turnaround time of a few days even for the note to be completed or for the chart to be completed. And then there is the new category of full AI scribes. In those cases, there is no human in the loop. Everything is happening with AI, and the results are available immediately. And that's actually one of the benefits of full AI scribes, that while the visit is fresh in clinicians' mind and they remember all the details, it's much easier for them to review and approve and say, yes, this is exactly what happened during the visit, and update the chart. As time passes, there is going to be details that are missed, and it would be harder for the clinician to actually approve that. So we believe that recency of the notes being completed is a big part of the advantage of AI scribes.
to our audience, if you're just joining us, I'm Jim Tate. And on this episode of the Tate Chronicles, we're speaking about AI scribes with Tali.AI. Have you identified any particular challenges to using ambient scribes for medical records in terms of technology? You know, the microphones or the processing speed of the, end devices? Any technology issues that have been identified?
Yeah, there are. We are basically clinicians practice from a wide range of setups. From some of them have very old desktops, very old operating systems as well. Sometimes the room they're practicing in is very noisy. Sometimes even the accent of the clinician and the patient combined by the noise in the room makes it harder for the technology to transcribe and capture accurately. So the way we have tried to mitigate this is that one is that the reason we developed that mobile application as kind of an independent platform was that even if you don't have any microphone attached to your desktop, or if you don't have a laptop with you, all of that, you can still use Tali's mobile app as the microphone that basically captures everything and then syncs all the audio with the desktop application. So this is interesting because I hear different use cases from our clinicians. One of them was actually telling me that he puts his mobile app between himself and the patient as a way of capturing both conversations clearly, but also as a way to indicate clearly to the patient that the conversation is being recorded. So that was interesting. But so that is one way. The other is that we offer basically a suggestion on this is the microphone that's cost effective, but also very accurate as the way we have as we have tested it in different settings. So if a clinician comes to us and say, hey, I don't know which microphone I should get, like I don't have any microphone, we suggest that. But yes, for us to cover all different types of environments, etc., it's going to take time. Also, it's going to take time for clinics and organizations as well to build the infrastructure needed to for this next generation of human-computer interaction, which is going to happen mostly on voice. But the good thing about one of the benefits of this solution category is that it's actually very lightweight. Very low impact at the point of care compared to all the other solutions that clinicians historically had to implement and get started on. So, but yes, regardless, there's always going to be use cases and corner cases where you need to find workarounds for.
What are you finding in terms of how long does it take a clinician to start feeling comfortable with the technology? Is there much training, or is it just in a couple days once they're used to the flow, that's sufficient?
We built Tali as a self-serve tool, so most of our clinicians actually just go on our website, download, get started on their own. We offer a 30-minute free onboarding and training session to clinicians, but less than 10% of clinicians actually need that and will take that offer. Most of them will just figure it out. We have been very intentional about this because we know that historically clinicians have had a lot of frustration with their software, with their technology pieces. So we wanted to make sure that this is going to be very seamless in their workflows, integrated with their EMR, so it wouldn't be another piece of technology they would have to log in and log out from and then switch screens between. So these have all been very top of mind for us. So with all of this, we actually see that we have this rule of 5-5. Basically, if you use Tali in 5 consecutive sessions in 5 days, you're hooked and you can't go. Usually don't go back because it's so much easier, a lot more effective to use this. And it's usually we barely see clinicians going back to the previous way of typing and documenting.
I can really see how this would work in an ambulatory setting. When you're inpatient and there's, different people adding information to the medical record, I guess it really wouldn't matter because, like, nursing staff could use their traditional way, but the integration is in place. The intensivist or the hospitalist or the rounding physician could use the Scribe AI, and the EHR doesn't really care where the data is coming from or how it's coming in, as long as it's coming in.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think if you compare it to the early days of EMRs, we had a few generic EMRs, and then as the market matured, we started seeing specialized EMRs that work better for cardiologists, EMRs that work better for orthopedic surgeons, all of that. And then I think this is where we're going with this solution category as well. I think there are going to be companies that focus more on inpatient facilities, as you mentioned, trying to maximize and adapt to the specific workflows that happen in an inpatient setting compared to an outpatient. And from specialties and from the setups of the clinic, all of that, I think there's going to be a lot of very vertically focused AI assistant companies that will develop. But we need to remember this is still a day zero. I would consider this to be zero of this solution category, and it's a massive opportunity. So I'm also very excited to see how us and the other companies mature in this market, basically.
At Tali.AI, is this your exclusive offering, the ambient scribe technology, or are you doing, kind of other related technologies?
So Tali is an AI assistant, like that voice assistant for EMR. So the core functionality is that the AI scribe, as you mentioned, when we listen to the conversation and we document. There is the dictation component as well, where sometimes, like especially with psychiatrists and mental health, it happens that an observation might not be verbally communicated by the clinician. So after the patient leaves the room, the clinician might decide to dictate part of the note into the EMR, saying, hey, the patient seemed a little pale overall, and that they want to basically follow up on that in their next visit, something like that. But so that dictation is added. There is a medical search component where you can say, like, what is the recommended dosage of amoxicillin for a 3-year-old? And then Tali will dig into a library of evidence-based resources to get the answer with reference to the answer and all of that. All the way to, for our integrated EMRs, you can say, set a reminder for this patient to come back in 8 weeks. And then Tali will set up the requirements. So we are really, the vision of the product, as I said, is to be that a voice interface for everything end to end. We have built part of this functionality so far, but we're certainly on the path to cover more of the functionalities as well.
And so right now, clinicians can come and have a trial from your website, but going forward, is that going to be the main way that you move to the market, or are you establishing agreements with various EHRs so they can offer it as part of their package, or all the above?
So our main go-to-market strategy is actually through partnership with EHR companies as their preferred AI scribe, or as a reseller opportunity. We have had a lot of success both in Canada and US with that model. Our product-led growth model, or self-serve model, as you just described, this has been an interesting, because we started that way, and then we're still seeing that like almost 30% of our growth is just coming from referrals, and a clinician likes Tali, sends their colleague to try Tali as well. And a lot of cases, they actually bring their whole organization as an enterprise deal, like a B2B deal for us. So that part is kind of an organic piece of it. And it's kind of, to be honest, an indication for us of how effective we are for the end user, and how optimized they are, how much of their advocacy do we have. So our go-to-market strategy does include that PLG model, the product-led sales model, like we like to enterprises of clinic groups of like 150 docs or 200 docs, and also through the partnership with EHR companies.
Well, before we totally run out of time today, Please let our listeners know how they can find out more about Tali's services and products. Where should they go? How can they find out more information?
Yeah, you can. They can go to Tali.AI, Tali.AI. That's our website, and the best way to get the updates about the company is to follow our LinkedIn account or Instagram account. That's where we send all the updates to the product and the new partnerships that we signed with HR companies.
Well, great. Well, to our audience, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. I offer a special salute to my guest today, Mahshid Yassaei. Mahshid, thanks for coming aboard today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. That's healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.
Tate Chronicles transmission ending now.